at the core, Jiu Jitsu teaches you how to handle pressure and discomfort.
Absolutely.
And that's something we get a lot in life, whether or not we realize it. In the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek. So it's all about answering the call, going on that journey, stepping outside of your comfort zone, because it is going to build you into a better person, a stronger character.
Man.
And there's going to be adversity, and there's going to be trial.
Yep.
But if you stick through it, have blue belt, purple belt, it was like, okay, well, now I know how to go from here, and then right back to the start, and now we're in this infinite loop that I can
full
just keep
circle
going through. But at brown belt has been interesting because now I see it as a sphere. It's three-dimensional now.
Whoa.
You've added so many loops and so many sequences that now you've got like this ball of yarn that's three-dimensional, and you can connect going across and up and down, and it's just like every direction there's something to do.
Wow.
It's been beautiful, and brown belt has been really, really fun. If you think about your religion as an outsider, some of that stuff is weird to other people too.
For sure.
And it's really based on where you grew up and your culture, the culture that you grew up in. What
100%.
time period did you grow up in? All of that stuff impacts the person that you are.
No doubt.
And if we can be more understanding, then we can hopefully navigate a lot of this conflict that we have. And this is still pretty early. And my wife looks at me and she says, she's like, look at how many people you've helped just by following your dream.
Wow.
And my response, without hesitation, was, now imagine if everybody else did the same thing. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm excited about at ZA.
Hello, my name's Jared Garay, and welcome to the Humans in Harmony podcast, where we learn about the interconnectedness of the mind, body, and spirit. And today we're joined by another incredible guest, Mark Padilla, who is the Jiu Jitsu gym owner that I go to and an incredible leader in our community. And I'm excited to talk to him today, hear about his story, and see what we might learn.
Well, thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
You got it. So why don't we start off with your story, man? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, grew up in Hatch. And I think you were from Hatch too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love having people from Hatch at the gym.
Heck
it
yeah.
really takes me back to, childhood, growing up, teenage years, high school, all that stuff. So really happy that over the years we've actually grown that network of people that have trained or drive up, because it's a 30-minute drive.
Yeah.
To come to Cruces. But yeah, we appreciate people who come out or who used to live there, live here now. Yeah, really dig it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm surprised there's quite a few people that come from Hatch and make that drive, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Are you in town? Are you living in town, or are you out there?
I'm living here in Las Cruces.
Good. How long did you stay in Hatch?
I was born in here, grew up in Array, and then went to Hatch probably through middle school to high school. And then from there, came here for college. First job out of college, I went to Dallas for 3 years, which was awesome. But now I'm back home, so it's good to be back.
That's nice, man. Did you graduate? What year there?
NMSU?
No,
or
Hatch, yeah.
2016.
Cool. I was class of 03.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I lived there most of my life. Little stints here and there. Like we moved to Albuquerque for a little bit when I was really little.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of family up there. We lived in Tier C for a year or two. But
the rivals.
Yeah, the rivals, man. Hot Springs. Some interesting games against those guys. Basketball, football. It was always pretty heated.
So the rivalry was hot back then too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But no, yeah. I've spent most of my time growing up there in the valley in the 90s. And it's a different time. We're not as connected. All the internet stuff and Facebook, Instagram, all the connectivity that we have now. We really didn't have it in the 90s. So we were out there. You had your friends, and you'd go play baseball in the dirt lots and stuff like that. So it was an interesting place to grow up.
No doubt. And yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. It's crazy how fast these times are changing and how different the world is today for kids growing up versus, what we grew up in. For me, it was kind of shifting towards technology, probably elementary school. But for you, there was none of that social media, social networking,
Oh yeah, like in high school, if we wanted to get together, you either had to call on the old landline, right, and make plans ahead of time, or just kind of go out and drive around and see who you saw and make plans from there. But it's interesting how social media has changed all that.
Oh yeah, changed the dynamics, social dynamics, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for some good and some bad. So it's been, but for the most part, I think it's good. I mean, we got a more opportunity to connect with people, learn other things, and like YouTube, man, you can learn anything you want pretty much on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube University. I mean, you learn anything you want, and it's awesome. I think that's the one big platform that has like changed the world. You know, when I'm a little bit older than you, so like I was born 85.
Mm-hmm.
What year were you born?
97.
Oh, okay. So you're right on the cusp of like that Gen X or Gen Y, Gen Z, like right in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, you got to see some of the technology coming in.
Yeah.
And we were already a little bit older, but it's interesting. I think YouTube has changed the world more than any other platform.
I totally agree.
Before, like when we were growing up, you heard about people from other places, people
Mm-hmm.
in China and Mexico and in Europe, and you could only guess at what they were like. You read encyclopedias back then, use the library,
Mm-hmm.
and now you can pick up your phone and see what people are doing in China, see what they're doing in Russia, in Africa, Europe.
Yeah.
It's changed the dynamic of how we understand each other.
Oh, no doubt. And learn from them.
Yes, yeah.
So it's like rapidly accelerating the learning power of us humans.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Even just like for jiu-jitsu wise, when when I started 8 years ago to now, the plethora of information that's out there to be self-taught or to study on your own is enormous.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't like that when I started, and even for the guys before that, there was nothing out there.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely a crazy point. And yeah, jiu-jitsu, the evolution through social media, YouTube, all that. I definitely want to get to that here in a bit, but
yeah.
Let's hit your story a little harder first. So you were pretty much in Hatch the whole time.
Yeah, man. I consider myself a New Mexico native. My family's from here. I actually was very lucky to find a heritage database online years ago, and it had my family tree going back like 400 years. So, my family has been here as long or longer than the country has even been a country.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're talking about coming with Oñate and the people that were coming through and settling in those times, the Spanish. And I can trace my lineage going way, way back. And I was really fortunate to find that. So it gives me like a deep sense of connection with the state, with the land here, with the people here.
Oh, yeah. Deep roots.
Yeah. Which is awesome that, Zia turned out the way it did, because Zia is the state, it's the state symbol. So really cool how everything kind of worked out in that way.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What else about Hatch Valley did you love the most?
Oh, the Hatch Valley, man. Obviously the chili.
Can't skip the chili.
The one question I always get being older, like everybody says, oh, well, you're from Hatch, and the first thing they say is Sparky's, right? And nothing against Sparky's. I love those guys. Tico's done a great job out there.
Oh, yeah.
And but when I was growing up, there was no Sparky's. So when I go home, I hit all the old spots. I hit like B&E.
Oh, yeah.
They're a classic. They're a staple. I love the Valley Cafe,
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the places I try to go back to when I'm passing through, or, if I have a free weekend.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
You still got some family over there?
A little bit, my grandma was my main family source there, and she moved out after the flood.
Gotcha.
The flood hit, a lot of people really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And so it took a long time for things over there to kind of get back to normal. And after the flood, she moved into Cruces for the last few years of her life before she passed away. But that was really my main family out there.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you out to the LC, Las Cruces?
Man, growing up in Hatch, is like Cruces is like the big city.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We
sure.
We didn't have any stoplights. It's a small town, one or two main roads, and then everything else is, valley, dirt roads, riverbanks, all the stuff you hear in the country songs. But so yeah, to me it was like, oh, Cruces is the big city. So as soon as I graduated, I moved out here, and I've really enjoyed it. I love the community. I love the people around that I've gotten to meet and interact with. So I've got a really, really fond place in my heart for Cruces.
No doubt. Same here. And it's a nice little middle ground. But like for us, you said, it seems like the big city, but it's not. And it's that nice in between where it's not too big and too chaotic. It's still calm and got that small town vibe.
Yeah. And if you really want the big city vibe, you go over to El Paso. It's like 30, 40 minutes away. You can have fun there. So yeah, Cruces is like that perfect little midway between a city and the smaller towns.
Absolutely. I love it here.
Yeah. And now coming up, well, gosh, like I'm going to be 40 next year. So I think I've lived in Cruces longer than I've lived in Hatch at this point, which is conflicting for me, because Hatch is always going to be home. It's always, I go back there, I feel home. That's where I grew up. Tons of childhood memories there.
Oh yeah, the nostalgia.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the Valley's going to be packed this weekend. It's a Chili Festival this weekend, Labor Day.
That's right.
So I went to go. I took my wife. We had an anniversary dinner. We went up to the hot springs, and then we caught lunch in Hatch on the way back. And it's like, we got to get in quick before all the tourists get there. This is going to be jam-packed this weekend.
Oh, yeah, the Chili Festival. That's like their one famous weekend back home. So
do you enjoy chili? Do you try it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh,
red or green?
I'm going to go green.
Green?
Green. Yeah. I like both, but green... It's over the top for me. Some roasted green chili. That's hard to beat.
Nothing beats that smell. Like everybody talks about the pumpkin spice latte smell once fall starts to come. For New Mexicans, it's green chili roasting. Like that's the smell.
Oh yeah. One of a kind.
I'm team red. I've always loved red chili a little bit more than green. So like right now, everybody's going in to get their green, and the red won't be ready for another few months. So I'm waiting. I still enjoy the Chili Festival, but it's funny. We take sides on in New Mexico.
Red versus green.
Yeah.
At some point, you got into Jiu Jitsu or MMA. I don't know. Did you have an MMA career background?
No, I don't actually. It's all new. All the martial arts stuff is new. Growing up, I love to play sports. I played basketball, football, cross country. Baseball, anything we could do back then.
That's what we had to do in Hatch because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah, you don't have much else to do. If you're not doing that, you're working. You're probably doing some kind of farm work.
Yep.
Or you're just out kicking up dust somewhere.
Oh yeah, I was the same way. Every sport possible.
yeah. I mean, that's really all you have. You played football and basketball, all that stuff.
Baseball, track.
Yeah,
yep.
That's awesome.
Same thing.
So yeah, that was my background. I was very athletic, but after high school, I really didn't have anything to continue. If you go to college and you do intramurals, that's maybe an avenue. But really, after high school, there's a steep drop off for a lot of athletes who don't continue on.
100%.
So I gained a lot of weight. I lived a very unhealthy lifestyle for most of my 20s. And I didn't start training jiu-jitsu until I was 31.
Really?
So shout out to anybody out there who wants to, start at an older age. It's definitely possible. I'm one of the older guys. We have like Jamie, who's, in his 50s. So it's possible to pick it up late.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't advise it. I'd advise start earlier.
For sure. But I have seen plenty of people pick it up in their 50s, which is crazy. But I think that's much better than not doing anything, living a sedentary lifestyle. But
you got to find something, you got to find something. With the kids these days, that's really at risk. Their physical activity, getting out and doing stuff, being social in person.
Video games.
Yeah. I mean, it's how can you compete? When we were little, that's what we wanted to do all the time. But I usually, I tell my wife, millennials, when we were growing up, we only had one TV in the house. Nowadays, it's very common you have a TV in every room.
Yep.
Right. But we had Nintendo and Sega Genesis and stuff like that. But that one TV was communal, and it was hard to play video games all day. You couldn't. I'm sure we would have if they would have let us.
Right.
But now it's so much easier for the kids.
I know. So much easier. And I think video games are actually good to a certain extent. I think they help with your problem solving skills, maybe boosting your IQ and stuff like that. But I also think you need that real life interaction too, getting outside, talking to people, doing things, which sports is a great avenue for,
Mhm.
and so is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's changed my life, and a lot of people too. I started seeing people come in from all different ages, all different backgrounds. On the mat, you get such a mix of people
Oh yeah.
that it's interesting. You got the retiree, you got professionals, lawyers, doctors, you got students, young people. I mean, you get a great mix of people to meet and to interact with.
Oh yeah. Young, old, men, women. It's
Yep.
the whole mix.
Yeah. The kids now, man, the kids are getting good. We see some of these kids come up and they get so good so fast.
Yeah.
We didn't have this. Growing up in Hatch, like you said, if you didn't play sports, there wasn't much else to do. There wasn't a martial arts club. We didn't have wrestling, which I really wish we would have in high school, because I would have wrestled in high school.
Heck yeah.
But we didn't have any of that. So when I finally came to Cruces, was a little bit older, martial arts was always on my list. MMA, jiu-jitsu, because of the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of exposed, jiu-jitsu to the world.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, we had seen boxing. Everybody were big pro wrestling fans back then. The Hulk Hogan days and the Bret Harts and stuff. And when we saw UFC come out, it was something completely different. It was like, oh man, what is this? Do you remember any of those early ones?
I remember George St. Pierre. That was like when I started getting into UFC, just because he was such a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
One of the first real superstars, I would say.
Yes.
And that's when I started. My buddy had a UFC game, and we would play it together, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
What console?
Xbox.
Nice. I had an old one on the Dreamcast. This is how old I am.
Dreamcast. What is that?
So the Dreamcast was a console that came out right before Xbox.
Okay.
So it was like kind of that mid-step between the Sega Genesis, Nintendo 64 era and Xbox.
Okay.
And Dreamcast, it took discs. The graphics were really good, but there was an old UFC game I used to play on that. And,
really?
You could actually play with Bruce Buffer. He had like this kung fu style, and you'd unlock him, and he'd kick the crap out of anybody in the video game.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so like UFC for me, I remember my first exposure to MMA, to jiu-jitsu was the UFC. I think it was 2000 around New Year's. They were running a special pay-per-view, and you paid like $80, and you got all of the UFCs from number 1 that they had run up until 2000.
Whoa!
So they had done like probably around 30 events.
That's a lot of fights.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so my uncle came to my mom. He kept bugging her. He's like, "Hey, buy this for New Year's. It'll be great." And he's like, "I'll give you the money for it." So she did, and he never paid her. But we watched the event, and I was just blown away.
Yeah.
And so the next year they ran that same promo, and I had to tape it. So VHS, I threw in a VHS. I taped like 4 hours of UFC fights, and I would watch that over and over. I think I was like 15 at the time. But that's what like solidified the legend of Royce Gracie and how effective jiu-jitsu was, because back in the early UFC days, it was like Wild West.
Right.
You see that first fight, and they have a sumo wrestler against like a kickboxer, and the guy gets illegally, now it would be crazy illegal, gets kicked in the face while he's on the ground and loses a tooth. Like his tooth flies out. It's like it was something
West.
Completely new. Yeah, we had never seen anything like it.
But that was the test to see which martial art was superior.
Yeah, because we always asked that question. It was always like, would Muhammad Ali beat Bruce Lee? Would the wrestler beat a kickboxer? And in Japan, they had already been doing MMA, so it wasn't like novel to them. But to us in the States in the 90s, they were the first ones to answer that question. And really, if you look back at it, the early UFCs, at least the first 4, was just a huge promo for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, 100%.
It was ran by the Gracies. They set everything up. Not saying that it was all set up. Royce beat some tough guys in those early days, But that was the point, is to go out there, take this 160-pound kid and have him beat, college level wrestlers, really good kickboxers, black belts in striking arts. And that was really what did it. So whenever I did look to get into martial arts, it was jiu-jitsu that I was looking for 100% because of that.
For sure. And where'd you start?
Oh man, so like I said, I didn't start until I was 31.
Mm-hmm.
I had a DUI, like I said, a really unhealthy lifestyle. Drank a lot, ate a ton. If you could imagine, I was about 240 pounds.
Holy cow!
Yeah, I was 240 at the time, 230 maybe, and I'd gotten a DUI, and that was like rock bottom for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I had, gotten out of jail and settled all that stuff and started paying my lawyer all kinds of money, like number one on my list was get in better shape. And so I found this little place. Shout out to One More Rep. They're here in town. They have a ton of free weights. It's a really nice gym. It's there off of El Paseo, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And started rolling there. It's actually really funny because, it's coincidence. Sensei Daniel, who runs our MMA program now, he was one of the first guys I met there.
Really?
Yeah. And so he was already into his judo journey, and he was training. He had been training for years. He taught me some of the first stuff that I ever learned on the mat.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was right before Sensei Oscar had opened Legacy, which is another martial arts gym in town. Really, really good guys. They've always been really nice to us. And so I had joined that One More Rep gym, and everybody took off because now Legacy was open. And I was stuck there like just me and a grappling dummy for about a month. I was committed, man. I wasn't going to give up. I was going to learn jiu-jitsu, but I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine that I was working with says, hey, I know a guy who just opened a gym. He's actually bouncing for my parents on the weekend and stuff like that. So he's like, you should try it out. Lo and behold, man, it's Professor Spencer. And
really?
He was a brown belt at the time. Just opened his gym. So I was one of his first students.
Wow.
Yeah. When I saw that guy, when I saw him practice jiu-jitsu, I knew, I was like, this is somebody I got to learn from, Yeah. This guy has such a grasp on the art and is able to teach in a very unique way. And I was like, I got to learn as much as I can from him.
Absolutely.
So I was sold immediately.
Oh no, I can totally understand. Going from training with a dummy to finding a brown belt, that's just a complete different level. Like, because jiu-jitsu, there's levels, and you've got the belt levels, but there's levels within the belts. So and you find someone that's high level like that, oh man, it can supercharge your learning curve or pace.
Yeah, the guy I've been training with him for years. I think it's 8 years now, and still to this day he'll show something and still blow my mind. I'm like, wow, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
He was a brown belt just as long as I've been training jiu-jitsu. So
wow.
Just to wrap your mind around that. Yeah, he went white, brown, purple, or white, blue, purple, brown, and got stuck there for like 8 years. I've been training for around 8 years. So like the amount of knowledge that this guy has when it comes to jiu-jitsu is off the charts.
Oh yeah. And you can tell. You ask him any question, he knows just the right answer, and his teaching style is really great. He knows how to explain concepts and techniques extremely well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, Professor Spencer, he is our head instructor at ZIA, and he was on the podcast not too long ago. So if you want to check that out, that's in a previous episode. But
I'd highly recommend check that one out. Check that one out. I liked it. I watched the whole thing. I loved the conversation you guys had.
Oh, thank you.
He's a very unique individual.
Very.
The way his mind works and the things that he brings up, man. It's been fun. Training with him over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
And now we've got guys like you and guys like Jamie, people like Katie. Like the gym has just grown to include so many unique and wonderful people.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the most beautiful aspects of it, is the people that jiu-jitsu brings together, and you build these new connections. And for me, it's like a family, man. Like when I moved out to Dallas, that's when I first started jiu-jitsu. Same thing, fresh out of college. I'm not doing intramurals anymore.
Right.
I need something physical. You need to get it out. Like,
yeah, if you don't, your body changes. You're not 18 anymore. You know what I mean? That metabolism starts to change. If you start to do less activity, your body's going to reflect it. Your health is going to reflect it.
Absolutely. And here I am in Dallas, far from home, so I don't have family. I had a couple friends out there, but I needed something. So I found a jiu-jitsu gym, signed up. I'd always been curious because all my favorite podcasters and YouTubers all talked about jiu-jitsu, and I was like, it sounds amazing. I just haven't had an opportunity to do it. So now's my chance. I'm going to sign up and do it. And man, those people became my family away from home, and I fell in love right away with.
Was that why you chose jiu-jitsu? Because of like Joe Rogan or podcasts like Jocko, and I know they talk a lot about it. That's cool.
Just hearing them talk about it, I was like, it sounds like I'd love it. It's problem solving, 3D chess with your body. Like, I'm like, this is right up my alley. So yeah, that's what got me in there.
And it sounds like you found a nice gym.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing gym.
That's good.
316 BJJ out in Dallas. And
I like that name. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a great community, bringing the people in, and just great people. I mean, I don't know if that's like that in most jiu-jitsu gyms. I'm sure it is, but I mean, I've seen other gyms, other places, and there's different vibes, and that was a great vibe. And it was a family. That's what I loved about it. It was my family away from home. And so that's what I was looking for, somewhere here in town. And I tried a couple gyms out. I was like, it's all right. Not the same. And then I found Zia. And man, you guys welcomed me in with open arms. And it's that same feeling. It's like a competitor gym, but also you got that community, strong family environment. So I was going to ask you, what type of environment do you try to create that creates that family, social, I don't know, connection?
Yeah, man, it's interesting because I hear stories about other gyms, and there are a lot of good ones out there. There really are. But sometimes I'll hear the people say, oh yeah, well, this gym just wasn't the right fit, or I didn't like that this happened. I've never been to a gym other than Professor Spencer's first one for a year, and then my gym. After Professor's gym closed after a year, and then we went into training in the garage, and then opened up Zia. So I really haven't got to experience. I was like, didn't know any of the traditional things like bowing on the mat and stuff like that, proper way to address people, or I had no idea about any of that. We just took we kind of took that garage vibe and we transferred it into a business.
Wow.
And I think that's what people enjoy, is that it's very laid back. It's non-traditional, but you feel like you're at home. You feel like you're with people who care about you. And we've really tried to foster that in our training and, just with our interaction with the members.
Oh yeah. You definitely feel it right away. And that's why I was like, okay, I found my spot. But I'm curious, how did Zia come together? How was it formed? You got the 5-year anniversary coming up, right?
Yeah, 5 years, man. I can't believe it. That is a milestone, and we started right before COVID. So that was a huge hurdle right off the bat. Like I said, I had this love for jiu-jitsu. I knew once I started training, I was like, this is going to be the thing. When you find something you love to do, you make very little excuses to do it, right?
For sure.
So if you don't like going to the gym and lifting weights and running on the treadmill, then you're going to come up with tons of excuses. Oh, I don't want to go today. My ankle hurts or my back is sore. But if you love lifting weights and you love hitting the gym, then you don't make any excuses.
No.
And it's the same with me in jiu-jitsu. Like even if I'm tired, if I'm hurt, if I'm not feeling well, I'm always going to be doing that. And that's really how you found something you love.
Yes.
So I knew I was all in. I was like, I'm going to do this. We ended up practicing in my garage for 2 years. So when Professor closed, that was a really rough spot for him. He had been going through a lot of stuff personally, professionally, and so he was kind of like done with jiu-jitsu for about a year. And he like threw all his focus into yoga. I think he got like 3 yoga certifications in 1 year.
Wow.
Like he was just deep dive on the yoga, which was great because I love yoga too. I love its health benefits. I love it for physical and mental health. So yeah,
yoga's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. But he was kind of like he was done with jiu-jitsu at that time. So I kept doing it. I was like, whatever I could get online, I would pull off, stuff online. And then Professor was amazing because he would come and essentially give me private lessons, but I had no money to pay the guy, so he was giving me private lessons for free. A few times a month we would get together, we would practice. I would learn as much as I could from him. And then I would train that with my other training partners and we would just go over that, and there was no intention behind it. It was just, just doing something that I really wanted to do. But after 2 years, we started to grow, and then we got that feeling of, okay, like we've grown as much as we can here.
In the garage.
Yeah. And there's something there, when people talk about it, the way they talk about it, you've got something special,
Mm-hmm.
And with Professor and I, it's always been like lightning in a bottle at times where, we'd get together and it would just be really fun. Everybody seemed to vibe with it and really like it. So after 2 years, I told him, I asked him, I was like, hey, like, let's think about it. Because I know he was done with it. Mondo, who owns Zen in El Paso, which is another great gym, Tom DeBlas affiliate, he had kind of put it in Spencer's head. And Spencer had told me, I don't even think he really knew at the time, but I was listening, and so he had gone out to see Mondo, and Mondo had a private conversation with him where he was telling him, he's like, man, you need to be running a gym, you need to, this is what you need to be doing. And he kind of thought about it, and then just kind of went to the wayside. But when I heard that, I was like, that's my in, because I wanted to do this, but I didn't want to do it without Spencer.
For sure.
I was a white belt at the time. There's no way you can see it now, and you can. Like, I was a coach at blue belt and purple belt, but I had Professor Spencer backing me, and that's what really gave me the confidence to put out a product, because for 2 years I never charged anybody. It was completely free training. We saved up, bought a 12x12 mat, and we trained, year and a half, 2 years. We did 6 months on puzzle mats.
Oh, wow.
That was rough times. Rough times, like 6 toes broken, like
pulling apart.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was, and then, like I said, I saved up enough money to buy a 12x12 mat. And Spencer's funny. He said before, when I just messaged him, it was kind of cryptic. He's like, hey, man, come over when you get a chance. I want to talk to you. And he said he thought that I wanted to open like an Herbalife business, not knocking on Herbalife. I was using it at the time. I used it to lose weight because it was so convenient.
Gotcha.
They were everywhere, and I could go get that instead of getting a burger or something. But so that's what he thought I wanted to talk about. But
little did he know.
Little did he know. I had wanted this for a long time, and I know he was going through his ups and downs with it. But once we set our intention, we had that conversation, he was open to it. Everything else just kind of fell into place. And that's how you're onto something too. We had to do very little to get it going.
Wow.
We didn't put very much money into it. We scraped together what money we had, and we put our mats together. We paid first month's rent. We paid the deposit. And then it was just like, let's see where it goes, man.
Wow.
Yeah. That was September 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how it was meant to be. Things fall into place, just God's plan.
Yeah. I mean, and we had done a lot other aside from training jiu-jitsu. We had shared a lot of like books, audio books that we really liked, and so that summer before we opened, we had gone back and forth with, oh, hey, this is a good book, you should listen to it, and then we'd get together and we'd talk about it. And so we were sharing a lot about philosophies of life, of martial arts, just everything. And yeah, everything just kind of fell into place, man. We're really blessed, as far as how everything's gone. That's
amazing to see what it has evolved into. Like, wow. Yeah. Like last night, we had a full house.
Yeah.
How many people was in that photo?
Yeah, mats were jam-packed.
Yeah.
And again, we're very blessed to have that many people and that many, kind, caring people. In jiu-jitsu, it's hard. You could get somebody who's going to lay on you for 5 minutes, and that's not fun, you know? And then they finish the round, or they tap you 6 times with the same move, and they don't ever tell you how to defend it or what to do, and it's just like, well, see you next time.
Yep.
And that can get rough, and that's not enjoyable.
Right.
I think a big thing of us, what we try to do is make it enjoyable for everybody.
Yeah.
Most of our students, most of our members have jobs. They got to go to work the next day. They have family, they have kids. You don't want to be, can't lift your arm because you got Kimura 7 times in a round, or black eyes and cuts and all this stuff. I mean, we want everybody to be able to train, go home, go on with their lives,
Yes, and that's something that I noticed right away everyone would play to like their opponent's level. And you're not just going to dominate everyone. If you've got that higher level, you can, but you choose not to. And that's been a nice thing. It really makes it nice for the lower belts to learn the techniques and catch up.
Yeah. Well, one of the things like with jiu-jitsu is you can't get better by yourself. You have to have partners, right?
Yeah.
And so
you can study all you want online, but until you feel it, it's one of those things you got to feel.
Yeah, this is a dance. We do it with somebody else. And if you don't take time and invest in your partner to make them better, then you're not going to get better.
Great point.
I could go in and trash a white belt all day long, but that's not going to make them better or me better, right?
Great point.
But if I take, 6 months and invest in this person who just started and say, hey, learn this technique, do this, and have a more playful role, then in 6 months, I'm going to have a good sparring partner. And in a year, I'm going to have a really good sparring partner. And then they're going to make me better, and growth is exponential.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. That's an amazing mentality to have, to build a group of people. I mean, that's another great example of your incredible leadership skills. Because
thank you.
That's such an important environment there. Just because you're not in your head, ego, like, I got to be the best in the room. No, you're trying to bring up everyone else to make, and that in turn makes you better, which at the end of the day, everyone wins.
Right.
Which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I love leadership. I know I've read a lot on it. I love John Maxwell. Have you ever seen his stuff?
John Maxwell.
He's really
can't
good.
Say that I have.
I would highly recommend checking some of his stuff out.
Okay.
He's got like the 360-degree leader, 21 laws of leadership.
Okay.
Some really good books. He's got some with a big Christian influence in them, which is really neat.
Nice.
But my favorite of his was the 5 levels of leadership. Never
Okay.
forgot this when I was, before I gotten into jiu-jitsu, because before jiu-jitsu, I usually wound up in some kind of teaching role, a trainer or instructor or something with whatever business I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in those environments or in those jobs, I learned about leadership a lot. The 5 levels that John Maxwell says is, the first one is position. People follow you because you have a position, right? So I'm the boss, I'm the manager, you follow me because you have to. The second level, so that's the lowest level of leadership. If you're banking on your position, then you're a pretty crummy leader.
Gotcha.
The second one is permission. You want people to give you permission to lead them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Not only do you have the position, but I like you or I trust you, so I'm gonna follow. I'll let you lead. The third one is where people struggle, because it's nice to be the friendly manager, the friendly leader, right? But the third one is really the test: is can you produce production, right? So position, permission, then production. Now that you've allowed me to lead, we have to get stuff done, right? And that's always in the professional sphere. I always struggled there. I was always the nice manager, but we struggled getting stuff done sometimes.
Gotcha.
The fourth is people development. Once you can produce, you gain momentum. It's harder to throw you off track. And now you focus on building up people.
Building your team.
Exactly. And then the fifth is pinnacle, which it's just people development for a really long time.
Wow.
So I feel like in Zia, in just 5 years, we're on track. Not only are we producing, people who can go to comp and have success, but we are now developing people. And so the plan for the next 5 years is just continue what we're doing. Continue developing people until we're the pinnacle of people development, and people know, well, hey, if you want to get good, then go here, because they've done it for X amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always been my focus in leadership.
And you're creating leaders.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful aspect of it. And I truly think Zia is one of the most impactful businesses on the Las Cruces community. Just seeing,
thank you,
like you said, creating leaders, good people, and these people are going out into the communities and spreading what they learn in jiu-jitsu, their real life application of it. And not just that, also the kids.
Oh yeah.
Which is a huge aspect.
Yeah.
Huge aspect. And I definitely want to dive into that here in a bit. But what would you say are some of the greatest aspects from jiu-jitsu that translate over into real life?
Oh man, that's a really good question, at the core, jiu-jitsu teaches you how to handle pressure and discomfort.
Absolutely.
And that's something we get a lot in life, whether or not we realize it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it the most. My favorite story is definitely with my niece, and I'll share this with you. My niece was probably 11 at the time, maybe 10 or 11. We had been running the gym for about a year, and my kids and my nieces and nephews were like my students. I didn't have a kids group. We started with a very strong adults group because we had ran the adults group in the garage for 2 years.
Gotcha.
So when we opened the doors, we had no problem getting people on the adult side, but the kid side was scratch. And so my kids were my first students. They all came in, they all took my class. When an adult finds jiu-jitsu like myself at 31, it has enhanced, maybe 20 to 30 years of my life. But when a kid finds jiu-jitsu, it could enhance 70 years of their life. If you find it at 10 and it helps you, then that's the whole rest of your life that you have this skill,
Mm-hmm.
And so my niece has always struggled with, anxiety, with, just a lot of stuff. And one day she's getting just handled on the mat, on the kids' mat. And she's getting crushed and side control, crossface, getting mounted, getting subbed. And she just stops and she goes to the corner and she starts crying. She's like, I just can't do it today. I can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, school's, this is this and that in school and at home. And, I'm just too stressed. I told her that same thing. You have to learn how to handle pressure on the mat. And when you learn how to handle pressure on the mat, you learn how to handle it in life. And I've seen it in kid after kid after kid.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite stories from teaching kids. And there's a lot, and adults, but that one. And so since my niece has started training, she went to competitions. She started winning competitions, beating boys in competition.
Wow.
She doesn't train anymore. She's now she's like going on 13. But she's got this confidence and there's a change in her.
Yes.
But it came from, that discomfort on the mat, the pressure, learning how to handle and do all that stuff that jiu-jitsu teaches you.
Overcoming the adversity.
Yeah, exactly.
Powering through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen that with my own son as well. Like, he was quiet, shy, just real closed up. He didn't want to get out there, talk with the other kids. Threw him in jiu-jitsu, and within a month, he was a different human.
You've got a great kid too, man. You brought him over for class, and he's sharp. He's very respectful.
Thank you.
I mean, you're doing a great job. Really, really great.
Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he's come a long ways, and it's been incredible to see how jiu-jitsu's impacted his life. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is one of the most important things in life. Like, I recommend everyone puts their kid in jiu-jitsu just from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And
for at least just a year.
At least just a year. Yeah.
You don't have to be crazy. Like somebody said one time, I think it might have been Jamie, we think that when people come in and they try it or they train for a little bit and then they leave, we're like, oh, they're crazy. We're really the crazy ones because like we're grappling all day, wearing, weird pajamas and spandex and, we're the crazy ones.
Yeah.
But, even you train for a year. I've always said if you train for a year, you're training for self-defense, to gain these skills. If you continue training jiu-jitsu after a year, you're pretty much training to beat other people who know jiu-jitsu, right? So in that first year, you're training to beat people who don't know jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And then if you continue training after that, it's like, okay, well, how do I counter the kimura? How do I escape the triangle choke? It's more learning how to defend yourself against people who already know the art. And the rest of the journey is majority of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it because, yeah, with a year of jiu-jitsu, you can pretty much handle most of the people on the street, like with no training.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is why I think you get that cliche about blue belts disappearing, right? You got your blue belt and you stop training jiu-jitsu. But a lot of people, that's their goal. It's like, okay, I know how to defend myself on the ground now. I can handle myself against an untrained opponent. That's why I did this. So now I'm going to go do something else, pickleball or something.
Yeah, the next chapter of life.
Yeah. And it's just the weirdos like us. It's like, I want to do this forever.
That's true. That's true. No, we are weirdos. We do this for fun.
Yeah. I was telling Ruben Luna out in El Paso, another great martial artist. We were stopping in for an open mat, and we weren't too sure like where the entrance was. So we're sitting there in the parking lot, and I was like, just follow the people with the funny clothes. You see them dressed like Japanese cosplay, or you see them in spandex like a superhero, you're in the right spot.
That's right. Have you had any, throughout your jiu-jitsu journey, have you had any techniques or discoveries that took you to the next level?
Absolutely. Yeah. Love that one. I call them my epiphanies. And, these realizations that you have at certain levels. Mm-hmm. And I've had at least one at every belt. And so like my white belt epiphany was really simple. It was just understanding that all the guards are connected. And so like I'm a half guard player. But when I was a white belt, I realized, I can go from half guard. And if I'm not having success there, I can go to full guard. Or if I'm, having trouble with full guard, I can transition to butterfly. And they're all just guards that I can use to keep somebody away. And that was just like mind blown at the time. White belt's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I feel dumb sometimes when people come and ask me like, have you seen this? And it's like, oh yeah, I've seen that. And I can remember myself as a white belt telling Professor Spencer, hey, have you seen this? The guy's been training forever. Of course he's seen it. But that was like my white belt epiphany. But at every belt, I've had something that was like that aha moment, and everything started to click, and it was a little bit easier than it was before.
For sure.
I think blue belt, it was patience. I had to learn how to slow down. You've finally taken the mount on an upper belt. Now keep it, right? Don't just go for a sub and get bumped off, and now you're in bottom guard.
Yep.
Right? So patience at blue belt was definitely one. At purple belt, I had to learn how to tighten up my movements and stop making big, pronounced movements and more smaller or shorter, concise movements. That was hard to learn.
Closing up the space.
Yes, exactly. So I had to go back and re-drill everything that I had already learned and learn how to tighten up in certain spots, which was allowing people to escape.
Yeah. Because for people that don't know, if you leave one little window, they're going to get their knee back, re-guard, and you lost your position. Yeah,
it's a game of centimeters, you a little bit of space, especially nogi where you're so slippery and there's wiggle room, So it matters, and it matters as you get up higher. When you're a white belt, it doesn't matter very much, especially when you're going against other white belts. I see videotapes of myself at white belts, like, oh my gosh, what is that guy doing? So it's interesting. The last epiphany that I've had, and this has been my current one at brown belt, and it's been one of my favorites, is I no longer see jiu-jitsu as linear. And I don't even see it as circular anymore. And this has been interesting to me for the last few months. When you learn jiu-jitsu, you learn it in bits first, almost like Morse code. Dot, dot, dash, dot. I learned Kimura, arm triangle, side control. And then you learn how to start, linking those together.
Yes.
And now you've got like a linear form of jiu-jitsu. I know how to get from, full guard to the mount to the back. Then you start to loop it, and you close the loop, and now you have a circular understanding of jiu-jitsu, right? And that's so like at blue belt, purple belt, it was like, okay, well now I know how to go from here, and then right back to the start, and now we're in this infinite loop that I can just keep going through. But at brown belt has been interesting because now I see it as a sphere. It's three-dimensional now.
Whoa.
You've added so many loops and so many sequences that now you've got like this ball of yarn that's three-dimensional, and you can connect going across and up and down, and it's just like every direction there's something to do.
Wow.
It's been beautiful, and brown belt has been really, really fun.
That's awesome, man. That's a beautiful visual, and I've never heard anyone describe it like that before, but it's so true because any position, you can go to any position.
Yeah, you can go any direction. And when I used to teach, like as a blue belt and a purple belt, I used to teach and be like, oh, well, that's wrong. Well, it's not wrong. It's just something else. And I learned that with the kids a lot. And kids are so eye-opening, because they're honest. An adult, if you tell them something, there's some people that'll like call you out or question it. But most adults are just going to nod their head. And if they don't like it, they're not going to come back.
Right.
They won't really say anything. but kids will let you know. Hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So I appreciate their honesty.
Oh yeah. That's the beauty of kids for sure.
Yeah.
They, whenever I was in Dallas, I actually helped coach whenever my son was doing it, because I was just sitting there. I'm like, might as well help out. I'm just watching. And that was one of the things that really accelerated my learning, was teaching the kids, because I knew what to do, but then I had to explain how to do it to where they understand. And that's a whole nother level of understanding for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, if I just describe it like that, he's not going to get it. So why do I actually do that? And then I go through that thought loop, and it connects the dots, like you're saying. And
Yeah.
like, oh.
Yeah. One person will question a move that you probably never questioned. And
Yes.
then they say it, you think about it, you're like, wow, I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, training kids or teaching kids is the ultimate test, and it enhances learning, but it makes us see it from a different perspective, which is what we need.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of jiu-jitsu as this very complex problem that we're all trying to solve, it's another reason why I try to build up great partners. Is, would you rather have one computer solving a problem or 10 computers solving a problem?
10 computers.
I can only process so much. I can only watch so many instructionals. I can only drill so much. But if I'm learning from you and you're spending hours drilling and watching instructionals and practicing, and we've got 15 other people doing that, now again, growth is exponential.
Wow. That's beautiful. With that, you mentioned drilling. I was wondering what your philosophy is on drilling versus rolling.
Drillers are killers, man. I know it's not the fun part of jiu-jitsu, but you do have to have a balance. I've learned that now, is you cannot just drill. You have to live roll, randori, sparring, whatever you want to call it. You have to have that balance of drilling and live rolling. Usually most people are just going to want to live roll. And if you leave people to their own devices, it'll just start to be live rolls all the time.
Yeah.
So drilling is important. My favorite classes that we've ever run, we got from Tom DeBlas one year. He said, he's like, this is what I do sometimes for my competitors. It was 10-minute drill rounds for one person. And it's an entire class. So let's say you spend, 5 minutes warming up, 5 minutes demoing the technique, and then you drill that sequence for 10 minutes straight.
Whoa.
And then I'm your partner. I drill the sequence for 10 minutes straight. And then we do it again. I have not personally experienced any more in-depth learning. Like, after you're done with 20 minutes of drilling that sequence over and over, and 20 minutes of having it drilled on you, you can't get that move out of your system. It's in your bones now, And that was
memory.
One of my favorite ways to train, but it's really rough because, you can't get people to train that, to drill that long.
It'll get boring.
It does. It gets kind of boring, but I'm telling you, if you can power through that, my personal experience was somewhere around minute 15, your body just gets it, That first 10-minute drill round, your body's kind of clunky, and you're figuring out, how do I get into this knee slice, and how do I make this work? And you figure it out by the end of that 10-minute round. You're like, okay, it's getting a little easier. But then that second 10-minute round is where something clicks, and you're like, oh, your body finds the most efficient way for yourself to do it, because everybody's body is different.
Starts to flow.
Yes, exactly. And it's, your muscles not only remember, but you start to feel the move. And that's my favorite way to train. But again, it's hard. There's no live sparring in that scenario. So we have to give people their live sparring.
No, that's so true, because when we do the drilling rounds, maybe like a 2-minute round, I can feel it. Like the first attempt, it's super clunky, like each individual move. And then it starts getting a little better, but I never quite get that full flow where it feels natural. And
if you do 2 5-minute rounds, you might get right to the cusp of that.
Gotcha.
But there's learning right beyond that point that if you power through, I'm telling you, you will have it forever.
Wow.
And I've talked to a lot of people, we get people coming in and say they want to compete all the time, but there's levels to competition, right? If you come in and you tell me you want to be a competitor, well, do you want to compete locally, regionally, nationally? You know, do you want to be a pro? Do you want to go on the world stage and try to make ADCC? The difference, and I've talked to people who have competed at the high levels, the difference between the high levels and the regional stuff isn't going to be found in rolling. It's not power. It's not explosiveness. It's timing. Timing is the most critical aspect. And it's one of the biggest differences between someone who is good at jiu-jitsu and someone who is great at jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
It's your timing.
That's powerful. Timing. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah.
Why is it so important? It's
so important because the windows are so small at the higher levels. At the higher levels, you're not going to be able to power your way through anything. It has to be technique. And if I've got somebody in mount and they explode and turn, there is a very small window for me to take that back effectively. And if I miss it, I miss my chance, right?
Right.
Gordon Ryan doesn't miss the back takes, right?
Right.
But when I do, when my partner rolls through and I'm kind of, I get there a little bit late and then I slide off the back or my hook doesn't get in all the way, now, I've missed that opportunity.
Wow.
That arm drag to single, the window is slow. It's small, it's really, really small. And so, and I've talked to people that have competed regionally and then made that step up and fought somebody world class, and they all say the same thing.
Wow.
Their timing was impeccable.
That's crazy. And I haven't really thought of it like that, but it's so true. Like if you see that back take and you think about it, then it's too late.
It's too late.
It's too late. You just got to be able to boom and go with it. And those times that you do when you're flowing, it's different. And you can feel that your timing's on point.
You're on, and it puts you in a whole different position. It's a matter of being on the back, controlling and looking for a sub, or being in bottom guard. Those are two really different places to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, again, and you're only going to get that drilling. You're not going to develop that timing.
I was just about to ask.
You're not going to be able to develop that timing in rolling, because in rolling, I might only see that back take 2 or 3 times.
That's right.
But if I drill it for 10 minutes, now I've seen it, 20 times.
Yeah.
30 times. You're going to get very good at that.
Wow.
But it's hard. One of the things I think you mentioned like misconceptions. One of the big misconceptions is that I have to give resistance when I'm drilling, because if not, it's not going to be realistic. And that is so far from the truth.
Really?
Yeah. Let's say you and I are drilling partners and we've got 10 minutes to drill, but I'm resisting the whole time. So you maybe get 5 reps in, right? It's more realistic because they're not just going to lay there and let you Americana them.
But it's not helping the muscle memory.
You got no reception,
Oh, man.
And so the other guys who were giving no resistance got through 20 reps in 5 minutes. Who's going to be better at the end of the day?
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
When you learn stuff, and I'm not crazy on like neuroscience or anything, but when you learn stuff, it's up here in the front of the brain first. And it's in that temporary spot where it's like, okay, I need to learn this right now. But after so many reps, now it starts to solidify in the back of your brain, and you start to really hold on to that technique, and your body knows, okay, I have to remember this for a longer period of time. But that only comes with reps.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of my big pet peeves is, we show a technique and then you start drilling and you see the other partner, giving resistance. And I've seen it. I've counted, these guys got through 3-4 reps.
Gotcha.
These guys got through 15.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of that as well, is I'll try to give a little resistance to make it seem live, but I need to cool it down a little bit because they need to be getting more reps.
Yeah. The resistance should be very minimal. When you push my arm for an Americana, I shouldn't just flop it out there. That's the opposite end of the spectrum, right? But I'll give you a little resistance, boom, put it into place and let you get your reps. There's a time and place for resistance. And again, that's the big misconception, is that it's not realistic. But we're not drilling for realism. We're drilling for timing, right? We're drilling for, like you said, muscle memory and retention. Those are our goals.
That's a great point.
So yeah, hopefully it'll help you guys. I've seen it personally. I've seen it over the years.
Wow, I'm definitely going to be more conscious of that moving forward. So I appreciate it.
It'll make your instructor it'll make your instructor happy, I promise.
When did you start training MMA? You said you started with Jiu Jitsu, been doing it for 8 years, but MMA showed up somewhere in the mix.
Yeah, I'm a grappler at heart. Everybody has their style that they kind of tend to lean towards. It's what they feel more comfortable with. So when we first opened Zia, I had the benefit of having some really good strikers around. And if you're a good martial artist and you're around, I'm going to pick your brain about something. I want to learn as much as I can from other people. And so Professor Spencer is actually a brilliant striker also. He's a black belt in karate. We did some training together. He showed me some drills that I still use to this day. And then we had another guy who was Muay Thai trained. So again, picked his brain, studied with him for a little bit. But MMA has always been, I've always loved it as a fan. I've always been a fan of it. Like I was saying, from the early days, I've been a fan. And like my conception of jiu-jitsu kind of changed. When I first found jiu-jitsu, I was like, oh, this is it. This is all you need. It's a superpower.
Yeah.
I learned this and nobody's going to beat me.
Right.
And then you start to go against wrestlers and judokas and, and the MMA guys are always more explosive and faster in their grappling. And you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I need to learn a little bit of wrestling to counter some of these wrestlers. Maybe I need to learn some judo throws to get some good takedowns in. So very slowly I started to realize that MMA has become an art in itself. It's its own style.
Yeah.
You could study karate, boxing, kickboxing, all kinds of stuff. And MMA is always going to be different.
It's its own sphere.
It is. And, so as vast as jiu-jitsu is, because like you take judo. Judo is very precise. I think it's like 63 throws or something like that. I apologize, I've got the number wrong. But I just started training judo, actually.
Okay.
There's a set number of moves that you learn in judo. Jiu-jitsu is way more vast, and so you could study for 10 years, 12 years, and still not cover everything.
For sure.
MMA is like that times 1,000 because it's every martial art.
True.
Anything, You could throw in some Wing Chun, you can throw in karate, you can throw in Greco-Roman wrestling,
right.
All kinds of stuff, and you can find a place for it to fit in your style. One of the beautiful things, one of the reasons that I continue to train the art, I think Bruce Lee said it, is it's your natural expression of self. All right? We're always looking for ways to express ourselves. Social media is nothing but us trying to express ourselves.
For sure.
But as a martial artist, you have to remember that you're an artist and you're actually painting a picture with your martial arts.
Wow.
You're expressing yourself at very deep levels, and you do it in jiu-jitsu. You can be very individual about it. Everybody's games are different. I mean, look at us in the gym. We all train together. We all take the same classes, learn the same moves, but you use a kimura differently than I do, differently than, Beal does. And everybody does things in a slightly different way. And it's the same thing in MMA. Is you have much more now to work with your developing your style.
Wow, that's beautiful. How everyone has their own, the artist, and how everyone develops differently, and the possibilities with MMA are so vast. So, with that being said, what would you say are like your top 3 that you think are essential for MMA?
Disciplines?
Yes.
You have to have a striking discipline. It's interesting because people coming up and even now are still very, like I said, if you're a karate guy, then you fall back on your karate more than anything. We're going to start seeing kids that have been training MMA since they were little and have developed that style, not karate, not boxing, but MMA style. It's going to be wonderful. But now I think you have to pick a striking style. I don't have a preference. I know most people default to kickboxing or Muay Thai, which is very, very good, But you can be a good boxer and do well in MMA. You can be a karate practitioner and do well in MMA. But you have to pick a striking style.
Gotcha.
My preference is Thai. I like Muay Thai.
Really? Okay.
I love the clinch. I love, it's essentially grappling standing up, so it's right up my alley.
Gotcha.
I feel, especially when I first started MMA, I felt so uneasy. I felt like I was a child fighting an adult because I couldn't do anything. I didn't know how to move.
White belt all over again.
Yeah, all over again. It's like back to when I was getting rolled up as a white belt, but this time somebody's punching me in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little more intense. So when I really it clicked and I found my movement and my rhythm, I was like, okay, now this is a little bit easier. So yeah, that's my preference, but I don't think there's, either any one that's better than the other. And then you have to learn how to grapple. So
For
pick
sure.
pick your striking art, and then pick your grappling art. Wrestling is a great one. Jiu-jitsu is great. I think they both do well, but they both have to be modified for MMA.
Yes.
And that was another thing is training jiu-jitsu for years, getting really good at it, and then when I was thinking about MMA, like, oh, well, I can't do this here because I'll get punched in the face here.
Yeah, closed guard's a lot different in MMA versus jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Yeah. In jiu-jitsu, if I got you in my closed guard, we could be stuck there if I'm real good at it. And there's not much that you can do. But in MMA, a couple stiff punches to the face changes all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can open the guard by striking in MMA, whereas in jiu-jitsu, we have to do something different. I started thinking like, oh, okay, well, this has to be modified, or how would I do this? How would I use this in MMA? And that was really what kind of started the spark. And injuries kept me off of the MMA mat for a long time. Knee injuries, keep your knees healthy, stretch, Firas Zahabi has a great one. It's called Strong and Stable Knees. Shows you how to strengthen your knees.
Very nice.
Firas Zahabi is GSP's MMA coach.
I know him.
He's one of my favorites.
Dude, he's awesome. His interview with Joe Rogan, I was like, this guy's a super genius.
Brilliant. Yeah. I love everything he says. I'm like, mostly I don't agree with anybody, 100%,
Yeah.
but most of what he's putting down, I'm buying,
Yeah, he's awesome. So is it just those two? You need a striking and a grappling?
That's pretty much it. Striking art and a grappling art, and you'll be fine. And then you figure the rest out on your own, pick up stuff here and there.
Right
That's
on.
the beauty of it is I don't have to be a karate black belt, but I can take the karate sidekick and polish it and get real good at it and use it.
Just one little tool
As a
from
tool,
the discipline.
And it's more like a mosaic of different martial arts now that it's becoming.
That's so cool.
It really is.
I've wanted to learn a striking, but I was always afraid to get hit in the head. And then I see the way you guys, or the way we train at Zia, the MMA guys, they're not throwing haymakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's made me want to give it a try.
I see those looks, and I was always like that also. Like I'm staring from the grappling mat, and I'm looking over at the MMA guys like, man, that looks like fun. But then you see somebody get kicked in the side or punched in the face. Oh, that doesn't look like fun.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really a credit to Sensei Daniel and Sensei Chad and the programs that they have built. Again, fostering a vibe much like what we have on the jiu-jitsu mat, where people aren't trying to crank submissions and take off your head and smash the crap out of you, but you're there, you're playing back and forth, you're having fun and still training the art appropriately.
Wow.
So I hope you join us, man. Take a shot.
I'm gonna do it. It's only a matter of time.
That'd be good. You can come back on the podcast and you can talk about your MMA experience.
Heck yeah, I'd love to do it.
It is a lot of fun, and I don't think there's a workout that's better than MMA.
It's full body to the max.
Yeah. Yeah. Extremely fun, very diverse for all types of different people. Anybody can go in there and you're like, oh, well, I don't like kickboxing. Cool. You don't have to kickbox. You see Bo Nickel in there, right? He's not a great striker yet, but he's a great wrestler. So he learns just enough striking to keep himself safe, and then he's going to pound people on the mat.
Man.
I think that MMA is the future of the sport.
Wow.
You're going to see people aren't going to be putting their kids in karate anymore. They're not going to be learning, this stuff for self-defense. It's just going to be MMA. I mean, because it's the most practical.
Mm-hmm. I've seen George St. Pierre say that the best training is when you keep it playful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Why is that so important?
Personally, I think number one is because it's more fun. And when you're having fun, you're learning more. We've seen that learning retention is much higher when you're enjoying yourself. If you're not having fun, you're not going to learn, and then you're eventually going to quit. So I think that's very important. I think it's important to keep the right mindset too. People focus too much on the martial and not enough on the art, where this is a combat sport and we are training fighting, but just like I don't give resistance all the time when I'm drilling jiu-jitsu, I don't have to go out there and throw 100% punches.
Yeah.
We can learn and remember that we are playing. This is an art. Professor Sampson says it all the time. You have people come out there like, oh, well, I'm a fighter, and I do this and I do that. And he's like, Professor Sampson who is a tough guy. Have you rolled with him?
Oh yeah.
He's a tough roll, man.
Oh yeah.
Big guy, good wrestler, black belt in jiu-jitsu. And he could put it on everybody if he wanted to, but he
Oh,
doesn't. He sits back there like a Snorlax, and he just lays on his side and he waits for you to come into his trap. And he always said, he's like, dude, we're playing here. This isn't fighting. We're having fun. You know, we're wearing pajamas and we're rolling around. And at the end of the day, we're going to go home. This isn't a fight.
Yeah.
So I think the correct mindset would help a lot.
And what is that mindset? Or
That,
pretty much what you just talked about?
well, yeah. That, and, you know, it's just, you're there to learn. You know, don't take it so serious. Just like life, you know, don't take life too serious. You'll never get out alive.
For sure. For sure. One of the many parallels from jiu-jitsu to real life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So another question I wanted to ask you is, we commonly see jiu-jitsu getting talked about on the memes on the internet. Like, jiu-jitsu wouldn't work in a street fight. You got the video of the guy butt scooting.
Yeah.
What are some practical aspects of jiu-jitsu in a street fight?
I think it's highly practical. If you go back and you watch the early Gracie tapes, the early Gracie challenges before they did UFC, there were strikes in there. They would get somebody to the ground and they would palm strike them to create openings. So I think it's very practical. It's been proven to be very practical in a fight, especially against someone who doesn't know what you're doing. But then you get some of the sport aspect of it, you know, and that's where it gets a bad reputation. Mm-hmm. My favorite meme is your jiu-jitsu doesn't work on the street because it barely works in the gym. So practice harder, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some things that I would not do in a street fight or in a real fight, you know, that I do on the jiu-jitsu mat. And that's because we're operating under a certain set of rules. You know, what's the difference between wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo? It's really the rule set, you know? And that's why I think
no rules in a street fight.
Yeah, there's no rules. And that's the difference. Like, that's why MMA is the most practical, because it allows you to do the best mix of everything while still keeping it safe. If you go back and watch those early UFCs, like I said, a lot of the moves that are illegal now, like I think it was UFC 1 or 2, some dude got head stomped. Like, he was on the ground and this dude just straight stomped his head. That would happen in a real fight. Yeah. You know, they used to be able to pull hair. The only thing you couldn't do really is bite, and people would still bite. There's stories of people biting in those early UFCs. So there are some things you have to watch out for, but MMA is definitely the most practical as far as preparing you for that type of interaction or altercation.
No doubt. And for me, one of the beautiful things that jiu-jitsu's done for me is it's made me not want to fight at all now.
Yeah.
And so one of the most practical aspects, I think, in a street fight is I know how to escape.
Yeah.
So if I did happen to get taken down or tackled or something, I know how to get out of mount and get up to where I can run away.
Yeah.
And
I say that a lot in my self-defense classes is, you know, running's probably the best option. So you escape. Technical stand-up is one of my favorites. Like, so fundamentals are always overlooked, right? The tech stand is probably one of the most fundamental movements in jiu-jitsu, and you do it all the time. You do it when you're taking somebody's back. You're doing it when you're trying to get up from a seated position. And I usually talk about that there. If somebody's standing up in front of me and I'm on my butt, you know, I can give a couple kicks at the knee, and then I tech stand up, and now running is probably option number one. Go get help, right? Yeah. Or get out of the situation. Very few times do you actually have to fight somebody in daily life. You know, it's not very common unless you're out there looking for problems.
No doubt.
Which some people are. So
some people are.
Choose wisely where you go when you're free time.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So we talked about the impact that jiu-jitsu has on kids. And I wanted to go a little further on that. You see a lot of kids nowadays. What do you see that is a common misbehavior or amongst the kids?
You know, it's so different. And with kids now, again, with the video games and the lack of socialization that we're seeing compared to older generations, we see a lot. I see a lot of kids who come in too timid, a ton of them that come in too timid, and then others that come in too aggressive. Gotcha. And so jiu-jitsu is about, you know, for us, for the kids class, is about finding that balance. How do you get into a, you know, grappling match with somebody and manage your emotions is number one. So we get the new kids on the
huge.
mat. Yeah. We get the new kids on the mat. A lot of them think they can fight, just like a lot of adults who are untrained, you know? You think you can fight until you really realize, you can't. But they'll get in there and they'll start crying right away. I had one kid that cried for like 6 months, and somebody would bump him in line and he would cry. And the kid trained for about 1.5 years. All of that stopped. Completely different kid after he was done,
So powerful.
And in jiu-jitsu, we tend to get a lot of the unathletic kids, because if the kid is athletic, they're probably going to be playing basketball, football, baseball. They're going to be doing something else, and that usually keeps them pretty busy. So we get a lot of the kids that are not athletic, and that's really one of the best things to see. Okay, this kid coming in couldn't do a bear crawl, and now he's doing a handstand.
Yeah.
And I've had some parents tell us that their kids have gotten more athletic in our class than in gymnastics.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got that from Professor Spencer when we've had times where we sit down and we have long talks about the curriculum and the direction that we want to go. What do we want to teach? What do we want the students to learn? And he always said that adults can handle more instruction and kids can handle more movement, right? So if I ask an adult to do a 15-minute warm-up, my class is probably going to be really small, because they don't want to do that.
Right.
But I can give a 15-minute demo, and they'll soak it up and they'll retain that. You're not getting a 15-minute demo on a kid.
For sure.
I don't know if you watch my classes.
Attention span is way
quick.
shorter.
I show things twice, and that is it, because I know they're not listening to me the first time. If you have kids, how the listening skills go. So we focus more on the movement for the kids, getting them to do the proper grappling type of movements, and give them a little bit less instruction.
Oh yeah.
But it's created some very, very athletic kids that weren't athletic to start off.
That's amazing. I mean, they got to use their body in all kinds of different ways. Rolling with another individual on top of you, being able to bounce back up, and standing, rolling, everything. It's awesome. One of the many amazing benefits of jiu-jitsu for kids.
Oh yeah, there's tons. My warm-ups, I try to focus on jiu-jitsu specific movements. Sometimes you go into a gym, and I'm not knocking other people, but most of the times you go into a gym and you're going to be doing burpees and jumping jacks and push-ups and stuff like that. I try to keep everything very movement based. So we do bridges and samurai get-ups and technical stand-ups and sit-outs. We drill that every day with the kids, so when they need it, they don't have to think about it. It's just there.
Muscle memory.
Doing it automatically. Yeah.
Comes back to that drilling.
Oh yeah.
Drillers are killers.
Drillers are killers.
I like that. For the parents, what mindset should they be trying to instill into their children to help maximize their jiu-jitsu journey?
I guess encouragement is big. We get a lot of kids that come in, and my class isn't easy. I don't take it easy on the kids. I expect a lot out of them. Not to do it like the other kid, but just to do it to the best of their potential. And so I think that I would love parents to encourage them to keep going. It's hard at first. Those first 3 months are really hard, but after that, I promise you, it's going to get better. And a lot of times the kids will be like, "Oh, I don't want to go," or it's training gi in New Mexico in the summer is so hot, So just encouragement, and again, not taking it too seriously. A lot of kids or a lot of parents will be watching from the sidelines, and they'll be frustrated because their kid isn't getting the move right. But that's part of the experience. Sometimes you got to do it wrong to do it right. And most of the times kids just aren't listening to us. They're just blocking us out.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll get frustrated because, oh, you weren't doing this right, or you got to do this. It's like, give them time, just encourage them to keep coming, and they will get better. I've never, ever seen anybody who continued to go to jiu-jitsu and did not get better.
For sure. Putting in the reps.
Have to, yeah.
And that's something I've seen with my son too, is like, hey, and I got to kind of help him go. But once he gets in there, he's ready and he loves it. Yeah. But if he could choose between jiu-jitsu and video games is probably going to win.
We're losing that one all the time. Yeah. And it's hard. And that's why we have to encourage them to, let's take an hour, And that's what I tell my kids too. Is like, I got you for 1 hour. 1 hour. That's it. You can go back and play video games. After this is done, you do whatever you want. But yeah, encourage them to keep going and understand that it's a process, but it is going to be extremely helpful. Professor always used to say, you know, and this is true for adults too, because there's sometimes we don't want to go to training.
True.
You know, and he says you might regret not coming to class, but you'll never regret coming to class.
For sure.
And so that's that, you know, that same kind of
For
thing.
sure.
It's like you got to talk them into it, but once they're there, they're having fun.
Yes.
You know,
it's that discipline, just like the gym. It's like,
yep.
Do I want to go today? And then once you get in there, it's like, oh, I'm glad I made it.
Yeah.
Locks you in. You're having a great time, and then you feel accomplished after.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's tough, but once you're over that hump, man, it gets a lot easier, and you just continue that discipline, that mindset, and it's going to transfer over to many, many different things. You know, the kids tell me all the time, like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, yeah, we all do stuff we don't want to do. That's part of life, you know.
It's part of life.
Once you wrap your mind around that and it gets easier, you're going to have a better time.
Oh yeah.
But if we're just focused on, I don't want to do this, I want to do stuff I want, and life is going to be hard.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing that's important about jiu-jitsu. It helps get that mindset. Hey, we can't just do what we want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we got to do the things that we don't want to do,
mm-hmm.
and it builds that discipline.
Yeah.
So another thing for parents, how would you say, or any tips to help balance a situation where a parent might want to help their kid versus letting them figure it out on their own? There's like a fine line in there where it's the sweet spot where you don't want to help them and do everything for them to where they don't learn, and then they're just like, oh, do it for me. Or you don't help them enough and they're just struggling and get frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. We can put too much pressure on them sometimes, you know, and then it becomes, then they're not having fun.
For sure.
So yeah, I think, you know, as a parent, again, support them. If you really want to help, practice, learn, you know. We've had some parents like, hey, you know, that's pretty cool, I want to try it, and they start learning, and now you guys are learning together. Now that's the best environment.
Yeah.
But if you're just watching from the sideline and, hey, you're doing this wrong, or you doing that wrong,
you don't really know.
No. We had a competition one time. We were out in El Paso for a comp, and I'm watching. I love to watch the matches even if my kids aren't competing. And I'm watching this one kid who's, you know, really good, really explosive, athletic, and his dad is coaching him. And his dad is giving him zero advice. He's just, what did he keep saying? He's like, you know, get out of there, explode, get up.
Yeah.
You know, and the kid was flustered. I think he went through like 3 matches, his whole gi division. And then finally his no-gi division, like his second match in no-gi, he turns, he's like, you're not helping. I was like, finally, kid stood up for himself. And the father didn't train. He didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Professor Spencer and the way he coaches and his style is he never tells you anything negative like that. You know, it's always something positive, or always something productive and constructive.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always
Useful.
like that. Yeah. We'd love to just get up, you know, I'm trying, but
you don't say.
yeah, tell me how to do it. And Professor's really good. It's like, you know, I think it's a little bit of that yoga background. Is he's like, put your left arm here, put your right foot here, like do this, do that, and hopefully we can make it out. When I was lower belt and I would compete, I know I messed up if Professor didn't say anything. If he's quiet, I was like, oh man, I screwed up. Because he's one of those guys, if he doesn't have something nice to say, he's not going to say anything. But yeah, and I think we've continued that, you know, we've gotten a lot of compliments on our coaching style, and, you know, I just do what I see Spencer do, but it does help a lot. You're already in a stressful situation. Mm-hmm. Why make it more stressful?
For sure.
You know? So yeah, I would encourage parents to train with their kids. The families that I do see train fosters a great relationship. You know, we've got a lot of families that train together, and you can't beat that kind of bond that you get. You guys are both learning something. You get to kind of share the same interests, or you guys, you know, you have that common language or experience. So,
it's so awesome.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to my son, he's telling me about his roles for the day, his position he got in. He tried this submission. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome.
Yeah. See, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And you're coaching the kids in tournaments. What's that like?
Coaching is fun, man. You know, I always wanted to be a coach, but when I was younger, I thought it was going to be like a basketball coach, and I have done that. You know, shout out to Sean Crandall at Crandall Fitness, who gave me an opportunity to coach some kids basketball, which I love. It was so fulfilling for me because that was my main sport growing up, was basketball.
Really?
But my role as a jiu-jitsu coach for kids, I probably enjoy the most. To see these kids come in and train, and you know, whatever they may have been, either unathletic or timid, and then to see them go out there and win and have success, and the smiles on their faces, and you know, just the confidence that it gives them makes my day.
Man, the way they glow after winning a match.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
and even the sad parts too. You know, I'm not sadistic. I don't like to see kids cry, but when we go to competitions, or if we're on the training mat and kids start to cry, it is in the best constructive place possible.
Yep.
Nobody's going to be taking a video of them and putting it online. Nobody's going to be making fun of them. It's in a controlled, constructive space.
Building character.
Yes, and sometimes we have to go through that adversity, disappointment. You know, so it's good on both sides.
Oh yeah, 100%. So another thing I've noticed, and my son has too, is you're a huge Pokemon fan.
yeah. I got the shout out to Tat Reapers, the Eevee. This actually, we were in Vegas for ADCC, and this tattoo got me a discount, so I was buying like souvenirs for the kids. I'm big into Demon Slayer right now with the kids. They wanted me to watch an anime, so I picked an anime, and I really like it. So I'm buying a plushie, and the guy has an Eevee necklace. So I showed him my tattoo, and he's like, "Oh, let me give you $5 off." I was
nice.
Like, man, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, he loves your Magikarp rash guard.
Yes, that's another one of my favorites. I love it. But this is the fun thing about jiu-jitsu is we get to dress funny and we get to have fun, right? Like I would have never expected a job where I get to wear spandex, or I get to wear 18th century Japanese clothes and just roll around all day. But I think it's important to relate to the kids. I really do.
Doubt. And that's something I see with you, that you still have that kid spirit. You keep that inner kid alive in you. And that's something very admirable, because I think that helps keep life fun. Yeah. And how important is that for you to keep your inner kid energy, spirit alive? It is. It's important. Like I told you, I expect a lot of the kids, and I treat them like adults. I don't baby them, but it is good to connect with them on a different level. Pokemon was actually after my time. Like I said, I was born in '85, so by the time Pokemon was coming out, I was into teenage stuff, and I didn't get into Pokemon until the app came out, until Pokemon Go. Really? And then I started playing that with my kids. It was right around the time where I'd had that DUI, and I was looking to get healthier and lose weight. So we would go and just walk around downtown and play Pokemon. And so that's how I learned all the characters. I didn't know them before that. Oh, really? But I feel like if you don't close yourself off to these things that the kids are into, then it allows you to communicate with them, right? If I don't know what the anime shows are, the popular anime shows, then I really don't know how to communicate with these kids. For sure. But if I know Pokemon, then I know I can relate to one of them. And if I can get them to listen to me about that, then they might listen to me when I'm showing an armbar. Yes. So it's like, he understands me. Yeah. It's just about communication. It really is about. The other thing is that the stories that people gravitate to tell you a lot about them as a person and what they're going through and their interests. One of my favorite books is Hero with 1,000 Faces. Have you ever heard of it? No. One of my absolute favorites. Really? It was written in the early 40s by Joseph Campbell, who was a college professor. Okay. And it's essentially a comparative mythology book. But it's very, very popular. Actually, George Lucas used that book more than any other book when he was writing Star Wars, the original Star Wars. Played a huge role in how he wrote that story. Wow. It's about the hero's journey, and a lot of people have heard about the hero's journey. That's the book that it comes from. And so... Story of 1,000 Faces? The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Okay. Yeah. It outlines the hero's journey, and that's the classic story that you see in every movie, TV show, story that you've ever written or read. Any character that you can think of goes through the hero's journey.
So he was kind of the one who outlined it. He was a student of Carl Jung. So psychology played a big part of it. He talks about dreams and mythology and how that is kind of our expression for the experience of being alive. One of my favorite books of all time. Constantly going back to it.
What are some of your favorite key principles that you learned from that book?
One of the common, most popular quotes is, in the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek. So it's all about answering the call, going on that journey, stepping outside of your comfort zone, because it is going to build you into a better person, a stronger character.
Man.
And there's going to be adversity, and there's going to be trial.
Yep.
But if you stick through it, you ultimately end up,
conquering that fear.
Yeah. Elevated or enlightened, in some way.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a big one too, because I've always been religious. I grew up in a very devout Roman Catholic house when I was little, and since then I've loved studying religion. I've studied Judaism and multiple forms of Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and all kinds of stuff. So I'm very fascinated, but that kind of brought everything together and helps you focus on the similarities in the different myths and religions as opposed to our differences. And so it was instrumental in my really coming to terms with other people and their beliefs.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge, because oftentimes we get tribalistic with our religions. They think that, we think this.
And social media has only heightened that. We're even more tribal now, because no matter what you think, you can find a group that thinks just the way you do, and now everybody else is bad or they're mistaken. And man, we really have to open our minds to how the world works and how people work.
That's so powerful. And like you said, there's so much more that we have in common than different, than people realize. Especially across the religions.
Oh yeah.
People like to focus on the differences. I can't believe they think that. But it's
if you think about your religion as an outsider, some of that stuff is weird to other people too.
For sure.
And it's really based on where you grew up and your culture, the culture that you grew up in. What 100%. Time period did you grow up in? All of that stuff impacts the person that you are.
No doubt.
And if we can be more understanding, then, we can hopefully navigate a lot of this conflict that we have. But when we get very tribal and very closed off, then that's when, disagreements turn into way, way worse. Man, that's what we're going through. Yeah, that's what we're going through right now, man. I mean, the Abrahamic religions, you have, 3 religions stemming from one person, and it's, different differences of opinion, but they're all talking about the same thing. But for some reason we can't get along. But it's deeper than religion. It's human behavior. It's human nature.
Yeah.
That's another good book that I like. Laws of Human Nature. Have you ever read that one?
No.
Another really good one. Highly recommend. That one's by Robert Greene.
Oh, and I've heard of Robert Greene. That's
48 Laws of Power. Yeah, and he has some other really, really good ones. I like most of the stuff he writes. But
what was this one?
This one's Laws of Human Nature.
Laws of Human Nature.
And that's probably my favorite one. He's great at giving historical examples to kind of reinforce whatever point or subject he's talking about in the chapter. But it's about understanding us as humans and how we behave and why we behave certain ways, managing insecurities and doubts and, anxiety and all that stuff, they're huge problems right now for a lot of people.
For sure. Seems like you really like these psychological books.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would have studied it in college if I was a good student, but I was a horrible student.
It's not for everyone. You're a great Jiu Jitsu teacher.
Thank you. Yeah. I've always kept a love for it.
What do you love about the psychology?
It just fascinates me. I think it started with Hero with a Thousand Faces, and then went into Carl Jung, and I read, a lot of Carl Jung. I read Sigmund Freud and some of the older stuff. I read some of the more contemporary psychological stuff, and it just fascinates me how we're beginning to find out why we do the things we do, or why certain people act certain ways, and there's so many variables. Your setting, your culture, your age, just hormones and chemicals in your brain. We're just now cracking the surface of that.
No doubt. And I think it also helps us understand ourselves too, understand why we're making the decisions we're making. And that gives you more power over yourself.
Yeah.
If you know what's driving these chemical releases in our brain, then you can say, okay, hang on, let's calm down.
Yep.
Take a step back and rethink this.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think that's the biggest benefit when we study psychology. It shouldn't be so we can understand this person and kind of dissect them and give them therapy. It's for us, it's helped me more than anything understand, okay, when I have these certain thoughts, when I have these feelings, where is it stemming from? Is it positive? Is it negative? How do I deal with this stuff?
Powerful. Got a few closing questions, and let's wrap this thing up.
All right, man. I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Me too. It's been awesome. If you guys got some value from this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. But so what are you excited about nowadays?
Oh,
lately?
Man. I'm definitely excited about the gym and the direction we're going. I'm excited about the growth and the kind of people we're attracting. I think it's only going to continue to grow and be beneficial for so many people and hopefully the community as a whole. That's always been a big drive, is us helping the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm excited to continue working, continue helping people. And hopefully, one time we were at a comp after dinner, so you go to comp, you spend the weekend there, everybody's competing, everybody's tired and hungry. So you go have dinner afterwards. And we're sitting there with a table at Twin Peaks with 20 people. And this was still pretty early. And my wife looks at me and she says, she's like, look at how many people you've helped just by following your dream.
Wow. And
my response, without hesitation, was, now imagine if everybody else did the same thing. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm excited about at Zia, is that, look at you, man. You have great health stuff, great health content out there that hopefully help people lead healthier lives.
Thank you.
You're doing the podcast, you're shouting out other people, which was the point of me having my podcast, was just to, highlight the great people that we get to interact with. Katie has, taken off. She's a superstar now in the photography world.
Yeah.
Jamie's retired and he's part of the community and he's fulfilled, and everybody that Zia has touched, we've hopefully left them better, and that's what I'm excited about.
There's no doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. And thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
It's amazing. Are you working on any new projects lately?
MMA, definitely, trying to get into MMA, understand it more, be a better coach. And, in order to coach, the best thing to do is get in there and do it yourself. Judo, just started judo with Sensei Daniel. I'm excited to hopefully level up and get a little bit better at the stand-up game. And then, growing the kids program, growing the MMA program, the women's program, growing that stuff. So
right on.
I'm working on that. Jiu-Jitsu wise, I'm obsessed with octopus guard right now. I'm just all about octopus guard.
Okay.
So if you see any videos, man, send them my way, because I'm always trying to get that angle.
Right on. I don't even know what that is yet. So
I'll have to send you some videos. We'll have to get on the mat and check it out, because it's another one of those things like, I usually turn this way, but what happens if I go this way?
Gotcha.
And it's becoming, it's helpful to my game, because I play a lot of half guard.
Gotcha. You already mentioned quite a few books, but if you could go with your top 3 favorite books all time.
Yeah, I already mentioned 2, of course.
Okay.
Hero with 1,000 Faces is number 1. And Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene is a great one. I go back to those 2 more than any other ones. I really like The War of Art. If you've never heard it, it's by Stephen Pressfield.
I have not.
It's Stephen Pressfield wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance. It was a golf movie back in the early 2000s, I think. And I think Will Smith played in the movie version.
Okay.
But that was one of his novels. But he wrote The War of Art for a fellow writer who was struggling with writer's block. And it is just a great motivational book. Whenever I need to do work, I put that on because it kicks me in the ass and it makes me get up and do my work.
Nice.
And the way he does it is very subtle and very interesting. So I really like The War of Art. And then The Mirror of Yoga by Richard Freeman is another one I'm constantly going back to. I'm bad at the yoga poses. I'm not very flexible. But the meditation and the mental health aspect of yoga, I'm huge on. Chakras and understanding, your balance of your energy inside your body and mentally is huge to me. So I'm always going back to Mirror of Yoga.
Powerful.
Yeah, those are, I guess, my 4 favorite books.
Very nice. Thank you. If you could go back and give 18-year-old Mark some advice, what would you say?
Oh, man. 18 seems like so long ago. I'm going to be 40 next year in March. And, it's when you're 18 and early 20s, it's hard to see the point of life, But at 40, I feel like I'm up on the hill and I can see the other side. And it's like, man, now I get it, right? Now I get, for me, it's all about what can I give back? So if I would have talked to myself at 18, learn as much as you can. Don't chase money or women, and chase peace. I think peace in the end is what people need.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. Peace of mind, peace in life. And
how can we get better at doing that?
Meditate, pray. A lot of the stuff you're doing, eat right. Stay healthy, exercise. All that stuff goes in. That's why I love the chakra system. It's kind of a holistic view of health, where there's not just one thing you need to do to stay healthy. It's actually multiple things, because we're multifaceted, people, creatures. So
absolutely,
there's so many things that you need to do to stay healthy.
You got to keep it all balanced.
Balance, yeah. It all comes back to balance.
And that's why I started this podcast. I was learning about the mind, body, and spirit, and getting it all in balance.
Yeah. Yeah, you could nourish the mind all you want, but then if you're not nourishing the body correctly, you're going to run into issues, and vice versa, So it's really that holistic view of health, and it's one of the great things that I love that you're doing, and I hope to continue. Love to see the content that you're putting out, because it's even making me think about my choices. Like, okay, maybe I should think about what I'm eating or where my food comes from, and make sure that I continue to stay disciplined and follow that path.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just had such a profound effect on me, and I just want to help spread awareness and help some other people out that might be interested.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But thanks again for coming on, man. I had a blast. You've got an incredible story, and you're an incredible human being.
Thank you
for coming on.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.